everybody. Good evening to you. It is the 4th of May. How many times have you heard today, may the 4th be with you? I'm Nate Eaton coming to you live from Boise, day 22 of the Daybell trial, Lori Vallow Daybell's trial. Sorry for being a little late. I got a phone call just a few minutes ago from Melani Pawlowski's attorney. And there's some things I want to share with you that they hope to clear up about what happened. Everybody was expecting her to testify today. I even reported that she would. My bad. I got to admit when I'm wrong. And she didn't testify today. And I'll tell you why here in just a minute. Her husband did, Ian. But Melani was not on the stand. And everybody expected she would be on the stand today, and that didn't happen. So we'll talk about that. We've got some other things to talk about today. We have Alex, not Alex, Pawlowski. Ian. I don't know why that says Ian. I'm going to take that off the screen. I was kind of rushed tonight. Ian Pawlowski's recordings. That was a big topic that was talked about, first tonight and at the beginning of the hearing today. Satan tacos. I think that was the line of the day that came out of the hearing today. I'll play it for you. Insurance changes, not only to life insurance, but to health insurance after Tammy died and before she died. Being found in Hawaii, we saw police body camera footage of Lori and Chad chilling by the pool. Lori was in a bikini, Chad was there in a swimming suit, and the police showed up and gave him some documents. And we have a lot more to talk about here on the 22nd day of the trial. I want to get to the news first about Melani Pawlowski. So to kind of set the stage for you yesterday and then bring you the new news. Yesterday, the prosecution said they intended to call Ian Pawlowski. Ian is married to Melani, and the defense raised an issue that they believed that Ian had observed or read other witness testimony, which is not allowed. So there was a hearing held without the jury in there and without Ian in there to decide whether he should be disqualified from the witness stand. Ultimately, they brought Ian in. They questioned him about his consumption of the media. He said he'd only seen a few headlines, and that was it. And so they allowed him to remain in the court. And he began his testimony with prosecutors asking questions. And he talked about how he wore a recording device or had a recording device for the first about 2 weeks of his marriage because he was freaked out by the stuff that Melani was saying that her aunt and new uncle, Chad, were participating in. So we left court yesterday thinking that we were going to hear those recordings. The defense said they intended to play the recordings. We got out of court early because they were going to go and download the recordings and get them ready. So the first thing this morning we'd hear would be the recordings. We also knew that Melani Pawlowski had been in town. We had seen her, I believe, Monday, Tuesday. Yesterday was Wednesday. So there was kind of this anticipation building, I guess, that for people that are interested in this stuff, that Melani was going to take the stand. So today, Ian gets on the stand, but there is a long hearing without the presence of the jury of whether the recordings should be admitted. The defense argued that they were hearsay because there's other people on the recordings and they're not there to actually say, yes, that was me, such as I think Zulema was on the recordings and Melanie Gibb was on some, I believe, and Chad and Lori and not the defense. The prosecution said it was hearsay. The prosecution did not want the tapes admitted. The defense did. And the defense said, we want one tape admitted. We want one recording admitted. And it was 55 minutes, I think. And 55 minutes. And the judge said no. The judge said they're not coming in. So we didn't hear the recording, but Ian was examined, and I want to talk about that. Well, Ian leaves the stand, and everyone's expecting that Melani Pawlowski will be next. There was even a break, I believe, and they call the next witness, and it's not Melani Pawlowski. And everyone's like, what happened to Melani Pawlowski? Well, I learned pretty quick that she wasn't in the courthouse, and that she actually went home to Arizona yesterday. So I reported that. That's what I just told you I reported. Melani Pawlowski's not in the courthouse. She has gone home. Her husband is still here. Actually, no, her husband, I believe, was on the way to the airport or at the airport. I leave about an hour or so later. I go to lunch, and as I'm walking into the courthouse, someone's like, was Melani held in contempt? Was Melani arrested? What's going on? And I'm like, no, she was able to leave. She left. Well, is she still under the subpoena? What happened? I didn't think much of it. Went inside the courthouse. I'm reporting on the hearings, and apparently rumors went wild. And so just a few minutes ago, I got a phone call from her attorney, her Idaho attorney, Josh Garner. Full disclosure, I've known Josh for years. I think Josh is a great guy. He actually helped me. My first major story that went like viral 15 years ago, it was Josh's client. It was a dog that was shot by a cop, and the dog survived. Anyway, long story, it's out there. Josh called and he said, I want to set the record straight about what happened with Melani and why she left. He said that Melani and Ian arrived in Boise, and Josh, Monday afternoon. They anticipated testifying Tuesday around 1. So they get to the courthouse Tuesday, and around 3:30, they're told they can go back to the hotel because court was over. So they get here Monday. They anticipate that they'll testify Tuesday. Tuesday, they don't testify. They show back up at the courthouse Wednesday at 10 a.m., yesterday at 10. She never took the stand. When court wrapped up yesterday at 3:30, the prosecutors told Melani she could go home, according to Josh Garner. They said she might be called again to testify. She remains under subpoena, and they're waiting to hear from the prosecutors if she'll be called back. So that's that. That's it. She could be called back to testify, but at this point, she is home and she will wait that call. She's not in contempt of court. She was not arrested. She didn't do anything wrong. The prosecutors simply said, we're not going to have you testify. Again, she does remain under subpoena. They could say something and maybe she shows up early next week. I don't think she'll show up tomorrow. I mean, we don't know, but court's going to end tomorrow at noon. And if she's in Arizona tonight, she's not going to be there. So that is what happened with Melani Pawlowski, directly from them. And we don't know if we'll hear from her in this trial or not. The defense has not subpoenaed her, as far as I know, as far as I've been told. I guess they could, but she remains under subpoena, and so she could get called back. That means she, isn't supposed to watch any testimony or whatnot. That was discussed yesterday in the hearing. You remember that they were concerned that Ian said that Melani, after her ex-husband Brandon testified, she went online and read some of the headlines about the testimony because they're involved in a child dispute. So, that maybe that was why the prosecutors let her go. I don't know, and I'm not sure, but she does remain under subpoena, and that is what happened with Melani Pawlowski. That is all I know. For those of you who are very curious, and honestly, a lot of us are, because she's an integral part of this story in this case, and I think a lot of people were looking forward to hearing from her. She knew a lot, knows a lot, and defended her niece publicly. I did an interview with her and Ian. I remember it was Mother's Day weekend 2020 on Zoom because COVID restrictions were in place. We couldn't travel. She was in Arizona with her attorney. So was Ian. Nothing was off the table. I could ask whatever I wanted. We were just figuring out Zoom. It was kind of this brand new program. And I think that I talked to them for 2 or 3 hours. We have the whole interview up there. She defended Lori. She said the kids would be found. She stood by her side. And clearly that's not the case. And I imagine that her thoughts have changed about that. So that's what happened with her. Now let's talk about Ian. But before we get to that, here are the sketches from today. There is a sketch from Ian Pawlowski on the stand. We have a sketch here. There were 2 women. Taylor Ballard, she's a health insurance broker who lives in Rexburg, works in Rexburg. Angela Yancey is the benefits administrator for the school district where Tammy Daybell worked. We have Detective Nesbitt, Colin Nesbitt from Hawaii. We actually saw his body camera footage today when he approached Lori and Chad on the beach. And then we have the Gilbert police officer, Ryan Pillar, who was a detective and was deep in the investigation here. He talked about what they found and what they observed after Brandon was shot at and the Alex shooting and working together and whatnot. Okay, so back to Ian, the very first witness on the stand. I talked about how the defense argued that those recordings should be played. At one point, Jim Archibald called him a snitch for the police, and Lindsay Blake objected to that term. He wasn't a snitch. He was trying to help find some kids. Ian talked about how he and Melanie got married after dating for 10 days, and that's when he started to hear some weird stuff, like a bug crawling in your ear or your brain, and then you become possessed by an evil spirit. The most interesting thing to me that stuck out about his testimony, which I had not heard before, is that he said that on the day Alex Cox died, Lori and Chad had said that it would be a time of spiritual. You know what? I'm just going to play it. Let me play you what Ian said. To me, I couldn't quite understand if Lori and Chad had said this before Alex died, like right before he died, or when Melanie called them very upset that Alex had died, they said this will be a time of spiritual wickedness or something like that, and you need to get to a place of safety. They told her to get to a place of safety. So it was an interesting response. I'm going to play a longer clip here because this is where we learn about tacos and Satan. Lori sending Satan to Antarctica in the shape of a taco. I'm not kidding. And also blessings. He said blessings were flying around like flies. Blessings on the phone, blessings in person. But I'm going to play you this clip of Ian testifying, John Thomas cross-examining him.
Found out that Alex had passed away.
From what I recall, Melanie had been told by Chad and Lori to go to a place of safety.
Mm-hmm.
So she went to my apartment. Melanie was at my apartment. She went up to the temple in Rexburg, and that's about as much as I can remember.
So you were in Rexburg, and she was in Rexburg.
Yeah.
And is this a time when you secretly recorded her?
Yes.
Okay. And she didn't know she was being recorded?
No.
And they had put it on speakerphone, do you recall that, or no?
The recording on speakerphone?
Yeah. The phone call that she was on?
Yeah, sometimes when they would talk, yes, it would be on speakerphone.
Okay. And do you recall whether or not Chad and Lori gave Melanie a comforting blessing that day?
I don't remember if they did or not.
Okay. You were making these recordings and then turning them over to law enforcement, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the purpose of making these recordings?
We were trying to find out if there was, we were trying to either obtain some kind of evidence. I didn't know what the FBI knew, and I was hoping, we were both, I guess the mutual hope was that we would get anything that we could use to help find Tylee and JJ.
Okay. So you went to the police or to the FBI?
I went into the Rexburg Police Department initially.
And they contacted the FBI?
The FBI was present when I arrived.
When you arrived. Okay. And how many recordings do you think you did?
I believe there were 9.
9 recordings? Mm-hmm. And did you listen to these recordings with the FBI after they've been recorded?
I've heard bits and pieces of them. I haven't ever listened to them all the way through.
Okay, when you say you've heard bits and pieces, how does that come about? They just call you in and ask you to listen to this and see if you can interpret?
No. So I've actually never listened to them with law enforcement. It's always been in the context of leading up to this trial. So it's the last time I listened to recordings was when we were summoned to the grand jury to indict Lori. Mm-hmm. And we had some brief snippets that we listened to. There was probably a grand total of maybe 10 minutes total that I heard.
Okay. And what kinds of things were in those snippets?
There were snippets with discussions between Melanie and I, and there was a phone call with Chad, Lori, Zulema, Al, and Melanie present.
And what were those recordings about?
I was questioning, I was asking questions to Melanie. I was trying to figure out what she was hearing, what she was understanding. I was also trying to, another recording was the one with everyone present was, at that time Melanie was sick, and so she was just calling to talk to her aunt, and everybody just happened to be on the phone call, and so they started, the one thing that stands out was Lori said she folded Satan up like a taco and sent him to Antarctica. Lori said that she was able to cast Satan out by folding him up into the shape of a taco and locking him in a box in Antarctica.
Okay. And did that make any sense to you at the time?
Nope. They were talking about spiritual attacks coming soon, that things were going to get difficult for about 2 weeks, and then everything would settle and be okay. Mm-hmm. And this was, I think that was a recording I made on December 6th.
Okay. And so you don't have any specific, you have specific recollection of the December 6th recording about something that Lori said, but you don't have any specific recollection of a blessing that was given to Melanie?
No, I gave Melanie a blessing.
You gave Melanie a blessing?
When Al died, yeah.
On the 13th?
I don't know.
12th or 13th?
It was 12th or 13th, yeah. I just gave her a blessing of comfort.
Okay. And was that when Lori and Chad also were on the phone?
No, they weren't on the phone at that point.
They weren't on the phone. But you don't recall ever being involved in a blessing with Chad and Lori?
No, I don't recall.
Do you think that there was no blessing with Chad and Lori?
No, it's very possible. I mean, blessings were flying around like flies.
What kind of blessings?
Blessings of guidance, comfort, to remove dark weapons. I mean, when I called and talked to Chad and Lori to ask their hand in marriage, Chad gave me a blessing, and he removed all dark ties from me, and he removed dark weapons from me, and he shielded me with light, and there were just, lots of different things that he was saying. So at any time there was any kind of negativity or difficulty, there was almost surely a blessing that would come at some point.
So Chad and Lori weren't giving these blessings in like a dark way. They were trying to raise you up to a higher level. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how it came across at the time. Yeah.
At the time, does it come across differently now?
I mean, given the context of it, given everything that's happened since, it feels a lot more like manipulation than it does, true intent to help.
You feel like you were.
Okay, so there's a bit of the testimony from Ian. We put that whole thing up on our YouTube channel if you want to listen to the rest of it. But Ian basically was really conflicted because it sounds like all these blessings were happening and things are happening and the kids are missing, and he has these recordings. And again, the defense tried once again, can we please admit the recording? And the judge said no. We would have heard the chatter between Chad and Lori and these people that were in the group. Now, they have said before that nothing on the recordings led them to JJ and Tylee. There wasn't a lot of talk about that. It was mainly religious talk. So it's not like there was a smoking gun in there that led them to the kids' bodies. And this was December of 2019. So this was before Hawaii. This was before the kids were found. This is December of 2019. Right in the midst of Alex dying. And again, Lori and Chad saying that it was going to be a hard time when he died. So fascinating if they predicted that or if they knew it was coming. From all accounts, Alex died of a pulmonary issue, a heart issue, and the experts we've spoken with said you can't force that. But that's what we've got. All right, the second testimony we heard, the second witness today was Taylor Ballard. She works as a health insurance broker. She said that Chad came in December of 2019 asking about getting a health insurance policy for him and his son, Mark. Remember, Tammy's been dead since October, so this is December of 2019, early December, and he tells the agent that, how much are the premiums, how much will it cost, and then he says, can I add a spouse to it if I get married? Now think back. Lori and Chad were married. They got married November 5th. This is in December. And according to Ballard, he says, can I add a spouse to my plan if I change my mind and decide to get married? And she said, you can, but you have to do it within 60 days of your marriage date in order to qualify. And she said, you actually, because of your income level and your wife dying, you might qualify for, I think it was Medicaid, Medicare, something like that, because his income level was not high enough. So she said they emailed back and forth. Chad, I think, came in again and missed her, and then he shows up in March of 2020, March 11th, which was an interesting date to me because Lori was brought over to Idaho end of February, beginning of March of 2020. COVID lockdowns were starting to happen in March. So he goes in March 11th and he says, I am here to get insurance for my wife who is incarcerated. And I think something's good is coming, but I need to get insurance. And the lady said, the witness said, well, how long have you been married? And he said, we got married on November 5th. Well, this was now March. She goes, you missed the 60-day mark. You had to get married within 60 days. But another life-changing event is if you move from one state to another. That is considered a life-changing event, so then you can enroll for insurance. So he said, okay, moving qualifies. I'll do that. I wanted dental coverage. And she said, okay, what's your wife's name? And she said he wrote on a sticky note, Lori Ryan Daybell. No mention of Vallow. She said that he looked thinner and tanner than when she had seen him in November or December. So about 4 months, December, January, 3 months later. And, I can confirm to that. When I saw him in Hawaii, he did look thinner and tanner. And she said, what's your income now without your wife? And he said, $20,000. Well, she went to the Department of Health and Welfare and learned that the income actually they believed was $30,000. And so because of that, they get on the plan. So again, this might be a witness that you might think, well, what's the big deal? She just gave him health insurance, but she was able to prove just some small conversation of him coming in March to say, I need insurance for my wife who's incarcerated, after he had inquired about it in December after he was married. The next witness we had was Angela Yancey. She's the benefits coordinator for the Sugar Salem School District. So she goes around. Open enrollment is every August to September. That's when the teachers and all the employees can enroll for their insurance for the year, for the school year. $10,000 is the automatic life insurance that every employee who qualifies gets. And Tammy qualified for that. When she started working in 2017, she took the $10,000 minimum. In 2018, she took the $10,000 minimum. In 2019, a month before she died, it was increased to the maximum policy amount available. 5 times her annual salary plus an additional add-on option to a total of $130,000. So her life insurance goes from 10 grand, 10 grand, 130 grand in 2019. Both she and Chad had to sign the form because they were each other's beneficiaries. So, she signed the form. I'm assuming she signed the form. They said she signed the form, and so she knew about it. So it's an interesting tidbit there to know that her insurance went up. But I want to play for you what happened after Tammy died. How quickly Chad went running into the school district to claim the benefit. Here it is.
And do you recognize that document?
I do.
What is the title of that form?
It's a beneficiary statement.
Who submitted the beneficiary statement form?
Her husband, Chad.
And did you meet with Chad Daybell when he provided that form? Or provide him with that form, excuse me.
I did.
Do you recall when you first met with him?
He came into my office Monday morning after Tammy had died. So she passed away between Saturday and Sunday, and he was there Monday morning.
And I want to back up a little bit. You had said you worked in HR for the Sugar Salem District since 2013, right?
Correct.
Where did you work before that?
Madison School District.
And were you responsible for helping employees of both school districts process life insurance claims?
I was.
How many times would you say you have assisted with processing life insurance claims?
I'd say roughly 15 or so.
And so you said that Chad came in on October 21st, which was the Monday after Tammy had passed away. Mm-hmm. And in your experience, was it unusual for a spouse to come in that soon to process a life insurance claim?
In my experience, yes.
What conversation did you have with Mr. Daybell when you provided him with the form on October 21st, 2019?
I explained to him that we could not submit a life claim until we had the original death certificate to go with it. And he said, that's okay, I've already ordered 8 of them.
And in your experience, how many death certificates do most people order?
When they share that information with me, I've heard maybe 3 at the most.
And do you know when Chad returned to submit this beneficiary statement?
He returned on October 25th. I was out of town, and so my coworker told him that he would need to come back on the 30th when I was back in town, and he was there on the 30th.
And who fills out the information that's contained on that beneficiary statement form?
Chad did.
So the information regarding attending physician and such is filled out by the spouse typically?
Correct.
And drawing your attention to the notation that she died in her sleep, would that have been filled out by Chad Daybell before bringing the form back to your office?
Yes, it was.
Now I'm going to show you what's been marked as
All right. I don't know what happened to my image there, but I hope you could still hear that. Chad went to the district Monday after Tammy died on Saturday and said, I'm here to claim the money. Miss Yancey wasn't there. He went back later to claim the money. She got back October 30th and was able to claim the money. Remember that he is facing 2 counts of insurance fraud, 2 felony charges of insurance fraud. So the police and the prosecutors believe that there was some illegal activity on his behalf. Again, that testimony I posted on the eastidahonews.com YouTube page. You can go check that out. All right, the 4th witness for the day, they were going through these quickly. Detective Colin Nesbitt. He's with the Kauai Police Department, and he talked about how he got word from Rexburg that they were coming to Kauai, and they were going to need the Kauai Police Department's involvement with helping serve a warrant on Chad and Lori, and actually to serve some papers as well. So it was January 25th, he said, that he went up to the Princeville Resort where Chad and Lori were staying to give them these papers. And I believe that they were the papers that said that Lori had to produce the kids within 5 days. Remember that? In Rexburg at the Department of Health and Welfare or the courthouse. And so the body camera footage from the officer shows Chad and Lori are just chilling by the pool. They're just laying down. She's in a bikini. He's there without his shirt off. The officer shows up and said, Chad and Lori, is that you? They said, yes. They go and he gives the papers to Lori and she looks at them and kind of skims them over. And Chad sits up and looks over and he's, staring at him. They don't say much. The officers say, do you have any questions? And she says, no. And that was that. Well, later, Chad and Lori leave Princeville and start driving toward Lihue. Lihue is where the airport is. And I'm not saying they were going to the airport, but if you were monitoring them, if you were law enforcement, you might think, why are they headed down that way? And that's when the Chad and Lori were pulled over in their black SUV. No sign of any kids with them. No kid toys in the car, no kid's bike. There was a bike. It was an adult bike, but the back seat was flipped down so that the bike could fit. So it's not like anyone had been riding in the back. The officers asked Chad and Lori to get out of the car. They're separated. It was kind of surreal hearing this because we witnessed it all when we were there in Hawaii. And they seized a bunch of items that were inside the car. And we saw 26 photos of what was seized, including Tylee Ryan's bank card that Lori had in her purse, backpacks, electronics, a phone and tablet that had JJ written on it with the JJ's initials. There was lots of papers, including 14 or 15 copies of Charles Vallow's death certificate. 14 or 15. There was JJ's birth certificate, Tylee's birth certificate. There was apartment contracts, the place where they were staying in Hawaii, that contract. There was an envelope with $5,000 to $5,500 in it. Someone asked me, is that the same money that they had when you saw them? I don't believe it is, because you remember when I approached them at the beach resort and interviewed them, as we were walking, I realized at the end that Lori had a Ziploc full of cash. And I asked her, that's a lot of money, were you planning to leave the island? She didn't respond, but we saw another image of cash, and the police seized that money, and Lori likely had different money. So they had a lot of money in that car. And they had backpacks, and they had paper that had sticky notes on it that said, like, Hiplos, which, if you remember, that was the evil spirit that inhabited Charles, and Anjo, and there was Brandon's name, Boudreaux, Melanie's ex, and it said something like Gladius. The detective didn't quite understand what all of these words meant, and to be frank with you, I don't know if I did, but obviously these were names associated to people. Maybe evil spirit names. I'm not really sure on all of them. So the detective said he also served a search warrant at the condo. There were no signs of any that kids had been living there, nothing. But they did find a bunch of silicone rings. So I don't know what those were used for. On cross-examination, the defense got up and pulled up a picture, and it was clear that there was some hair on the seat next to Tylee's bank card. And the defense attorney said, did you take that hair and test it? Maybe see if it was Tylee's. The detective said, no, we didn't. He said, did you do a trace evidence sort of search of the car for any evidence that kids may have been in there? He said, no, we didn't. So, they kind of did say, well, if the kids were missing, wouldn't you have done a big deep dive on this vehicle to find maybe any sort of sign of the kids? And at the time, it was January of 2020. We didn't know where the kids were. The police didn't know where the kids were. So that was an interesting point of why didn't they do a big deep dive in the car? But on the redirect, the witness said, there were no signs of any kids anywhere from the time that they got to the island. So pretty much we assume that there weren't any signs of the kids in the car. And where were the kids then at that point? If they weren't with their mom and her new husband, where were they? And why wouldn't they just tell the cops? Interesting book that was in the car. It's called Visions of Glory. I'm not promoting it in any way, but when this case broke, two of you watching, sent me this book. And one of you went through and highlighted all of the teachings in this book or writings in this book that Chad Daybell was prophesying about. Very similar to what Chad is. This Visions of Glory book apparently is a story that came out in the mid-2000s about a man who died, had a near-death experience, and and then during this near-death experience, he had visions of the last days and what would be happening in big earthquakes and stuff like that. And then when he came to, he wrote it all down, but he didn't write this book. This book was written by someone who he told it about. I guess that's my understanding of the book. And Lori, from speaking to someone who knew her well, was obsessed with this book long before she met Chad. She was obsessed with it. And this book has some crazy stuff in it. So that book was in the car with all of their belongings. And so was a patriarchal blessing that Alex gave to Chad. It was written out. It was a written form of the blessing. So we played that a few weeks ago, and you can listen to that if you really want to. It's on our YouTube channel. All right, the last witness for the day was Ryan Pillar with the Gilbert Police Department. The defense raised a 404B objection to even having him on the stand. Remember, we talked about this with all the Arizona witnesses or law enforcement. The defense is arguing that because they're investigating cases in Arizona like Charles's death that they're saying it has nothing to do with this case. So whatever they say in court shouldn't be admitted because it's separate cases. The judge is allowing the testimony in. It's more of an appeal issue. When this case gets to the appellate level, they'll discuss it and figure out if the testimony should stand or not. He talked about how on October 2nd, he was in a meeting of 2019 when they got word of an attempted shooting. They got to the scene. It was Brandon. He said he had been shot at from a Jeep. They found ring camera footage that showed the Jeep. It didn't have a tire on the back. They connected with the Chandler Police Department, who said, oh, on the same day Charles Vallow died, a Jeep was here at the scene. Same color, same model, same everything, same Jeep, which ended up in Rexburg, which then the police seized. They caught that this Jeep on license plate readers. There are license plate readers on highways in America. And this Jeep was spotted going south on I-15 on October 1st. It was spotted in Arizona on October 1st on a license plate reader. And then it was spotted going back to Idaho on October 3rd with the license plate reader. And Brandon was shot October 2nd. So the timeline lays out. One of the things I did not know was that when the report came in that JJ and Tylee were missing and that she was with Melani Gibb, the police initially couldn't get a hold of Melani Gibb. They set up camera poles outside her house. Big long poles with cameras so that they could observe if there were any kids coming and going in the neighborhood. Tylee's phone during this time was tracked in Arizona, in Idaho, in Hawaii, and Missouri. Remember, Lori went to Missouri with her friends. We talked about that yesterday. We learned that if Brandon would have been killed, if Brandon would have died, there was a $200,000 life insurance policy that was in effect. Melani would have gotten that money. She got $300,000 from a divorce settlement, and there was a lot of Venmo and cash exchanges, according to the detectives, between all of the players. Lori, Chad, Alex, I don't know about Melani Gibb, Melani Pawlowski, who, yeah, I think was married at this time, maybe not. Anyway, so there was a lot of that activity. Now, that was the last witness, but then we went into an evidentiary hearing, which basically the judge sent the jurors home, and there was much debate over this big, huge presentation that apparently the witness is going to talk about tomorrow. FBI agent, special agent Doug Hart has been kind of the lead agent with the FBI in all of this. And this apparently kind of touches on all aspects of the investigation. It's 160 pages. It's a summary of everything that was apparently collected off of Lori's iCloud account, and there were 100,000 points of data on her one iCloud account. The defense got this exhibit Tuesday night at around 6, so 2 nights ago. They argued that they don't have enough time to go through this summary, this 160-page summary, by tomorrow and make sure that it's accurate. And they also argued that the summary on each slide, there's argument. The language used by the agent is argumentative, such as, I don't know if this is in there, but it would be something like, Lori killed Charles on December 12th, something like that. They're making it as a fact, as an argument, rather than just a bullet point, if that makes any sense. I'm not explaining it very well. So the defense said, we want the witness out, and we want the summary out. Prosecution argued there's nothing wrong with having a summary. This detective, also they were upset that this detective had met with witnesses. And the prosecution said, yes, he did meet with witnesses, but he never watched any witness testimony. Also, summaries should be allowed in court. They can be allowed in court. It's his summary of all of his data. You really want us to give 100,000 pieces of evidence and documents to each of the jurors? Like, there's no way. So the judge ruled that the witness stays, Doug Hart stays, the FBI agent, but the summary does not. And he said, if you want to revise the summary, you can. If you want to change the language in there, you can, and I'll reconsider it. Might be able to be readmitted. but for now it won't. So I imagine that there's some late night changing of that summary happening tonight, I would imagine. Now, tomorrow court will be held from 8:30 to noon. It's an early day, and then we'll be back on the regular schedule on Monday. It appears that if the prosecution has this, they said it's going to be a witness who will talk for quite a long time. It will be on the stand for a while, and that the summary is going to be quite long. It appears they're getting toward the end of their case. This might be the last witness. Maybe there'll be a few more. So the case could go into Monday, Tuesday-ish with the prosecution. The defense could then present their side, and they could have, I think I counted, I keep track of all the witnesses here on my notebook. I don't know if you can see them all. When they take the stand, which date. I'm like 2 days behind, but we're over 55. I don't think the defense has 55 witnesses. We'll see if they even have 5, because Jim Archibald has said they have very few. We don't know if Lori will take the stand. He said that after the prosecution rests, that's when they'll make that decision. So let's say that this is all speculation, which you should never do as a reporter. But if the prosecution rests Monday, Tuesday, defense takes Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday, there's closing arguments from each side. Then there's jury instruction. Then the jurors have to deliberate. Maybe a week from now, the jury has the case, or the following Monday. That's just my guess. I could be completely off. We could still be here another 2 weeks, but I think that this might be getting there. It might be wrapping up. And then we have Chad's trial to look forward to, because there was a hearing this afternoon for Chad. Chad appeared from the Fremont County Jail. His attorney, John Pryor, was in this court, and he said that he wants Chad's trial next May, or maybe even June, because he has a lot of evidence to go through. They still need to test some DNA evidence. The prosecutors didn't necessarily push back on that. They said that holiday times fall is tough. Pryor also said he needs up to 12 weeks for everything. Remember, his is death penalty, so his will be longer. So 12 weeks, including jury selection, including the actual case in chief, and then including the death penalty phase. 12 weeks for that, and he wants it next May or June. The prosecution said this fall would be tough because there's holidays and you'd have to break things up, and it's hard to ask a jury to stay for 12 weeks, especially over the holidays and whatnot. So the prosecution said it could be earlier than next year. I mean, obviously they're probably pretty much ready for this. They've just done it now. I'm just hoping we have a little bit of a break between now and the next one. And it's always possible Chad could take a plea agreement between now and then. So the judge didn't set a date. We'll know soon, he said. He's going to consult with both sides, and then he'll make a determination, and we'll know when Chad will go to trial. We saw him. He was in his white shirt and tie. We couldn't hear him. He was watching the proceedings, and that was that. So if that does happen, we'll have to meet again every night at 7:30 for Courtroom Insider for Chad Daybell's trial. What do you think about that? Okay, great. Let's go to questions. But before we do that, I want to remember Tammy Daybell tonight. Tammy Daybell, it's her birthday, 53 today. And there's a beautiful video that her family put together for her, her extended family. And I want to play you some of it. I cannot play the music because of copyright, but I can show you it, and I can put a link. Maybe I'll play a little bit of the music. This is a beautiful video that they put together. I wish that I could play the music. What I'll do is I'll put a link so that you can go on and watch it if you want. Tammy Daybell would have been 53 years old today and would have loved being a grandma and would have loved working at the school library, loved kids, loved her family, loved serving in her church, loved living life, loved going to clogging classes. She loved going to do family history work. She loved going to Zumba. She was just a great person by all accounts. I never met her, but I mean, of course, everybody that speaks of her speaks very highly of her. She's got a great family, so that says something about her too. So tonight, we remember her on her 53rd birthday. Sadly, her husband was in court today talking about her murder and setting a trial for that. But there she is with her extended family. I don't know how many years ago that is, but they speak very highly of her, and so we do too. So Tammy Daybell is remembered along with JJ and Tylee and Charles Vallow. All right. Why don't we get to some of your questions? Here we go. We got a lot. Okay, the Coca-Cola. Mormons can drink Coke. I see there's a lot of chatter about that. I said today that in the break, I just posted, I observed the drinks of choice among the prosecutors and the defense. Come on, I type about court stuff all day long. I wanted to bring a little, lightness to it. And I noticed that Jim, Archibald, and John Thomas on most afternoons have a Coke Zero. And Lori this week has been drinking a fully leaded Coca-Cola, not the diet. Lindsay Blake also had a Coke today. The bailiff had a Diet Coke. Rachel Smith has water. I don't know what Rob and Spencer or Tanya Rawlings drink. This is coming from a Coke lover. Well, the world exploded when I said this, that I didn't think LDS members could drink Coke. They can. They can drink caffeine. It's coffee and tea, but you can go all research that if you want to. All right, so that's out of the way. I'm sorry if I'm behind, but whose child is Melanie, the niece to Lori? Melanie is Lori's sister, Stacy's daughter, who died. Stacy died when she was young. So Lori, I think, kind of raised Melanie in a way. Jules said, I've read that Lori has schizoaffective disorder. Is this true? I have not heard that. I have not heard anything about her mental condition other than what they've said publicly in court. Mental health records for inmates are sealed in the state of Idaho, so we will never know what happened when she was admitted to the state hospital north or her psychological evaluations unless somebody leaks the documents, but we won't know. Why was Rawlings not allowed to ask Audrey the one question last night? Isn't it true she would have had the right to redirect? She had already redirected. So Rawlings questioned, Jim Archibald cross-examined, Rawlings redirect, Jim Archibald another cross-examination. That's when the judge cut it off. That's when Tanya said, can I ask one more thing? And he said no. So each side had already been given two chances. Can a judge overturn the juror's verdict if he feels they simply got it wrong? Nope. It's up to the jury. It's up to them. The judge does get the final say, though, in the sentencing. So the jury will come back in the next few weeks with a verdict. The judge will then say, okay, we're going to set a sentencing date. It'll probably be 2 or 3 months out. A pre-sentence investigation will then be performed. They'll dig into Lori's past. If she cooperates, they'll talk all about, her life and whatnot. And then at the sentencing, the defense will recommend a sentence and the prosecution will recommend a sentence. And then the judge will issue the sentence. For her, she could get life in prison without parole. She could get 50 years fixed and 50 years indeterminate. That means she serves at least 50 years, and then the sentence is for 100 years. 50 years are fixed. After 50 years, she could get probation. She obviously won't be alive in 50 years, but that's kind of how it works. So if the judge doesn't agree with the jury, then at sentencing, he can say, okay, you get probation or something like that. Was there anyone in the world that little Tylee could have confided in? If so, can they testify? They have been minors when this happened, but adults now, right? They could have called her friends to the stand if they thought her friends would have helped the case or knew something. I know she, was close with her Aunt Summer, and Summer took the stand, so they didn't ask about that. I think they would have called anybody that they could have to help. Nate, I'm a long-time fan of yours and follower in Virginia. Can I buy you dinner? Thank you, Donna. I appreciate that. if you come and visit me from Virginia in Idaho Falls, maybe we can have dinner, but you don't need to buy me dinner. Just watching is my thanks to you. That's good enough. So thank you. Kristen from Hawaii, is Jason Mao going to testify? I have not heard that. He has not been on any witness list at like the grand jury or whatever. So I don't know. Why do Melanie and Zulema have the same lawyer? Jamie asks. Probably because they know him. I don't know though. Melanie has an attorney in Arizona, and then she has an attorney in Idaho. When she came for the grand jury, the attorney I quoted from earlier tonight is her attorney in Idaho. And if you missed that, in just a minute, I'll repeat what I led with tonight, what I talked about at the beginning, so that you can be caught up. When Charles Vallows contacted Tammy to inform her of their respected spouses cheating, has anyone close to Tammy reported on what Tammy's response was to this information? No one that's testified. The email was deleted and Charles's email address was blocked. We can't say for certain if Tammy did the deleting, but somebody did. We also, her family has said that she never mentioned anything to them about her suspecting that Chad was cheating. Charles knew, obviously. A question popped into my head just now from Doug. Did Chad ever actually meet Tylee and or JJ? Yes, he did. Chad said to the neighbor, she never liked me, past tense. And he would have met her in Arizona at Lori's house. And we know he met JJ because there was one time JJ was misbehaving and Chad took him and JJ scratched him on the neck. And Chad said that JJ had done that. So he knew Tylee's kids, or he knew Lori's kids. Robin asks, has Chad had a mental evaluation? As far as I know, he is not, and his competency has never been an issue in this case. Any chance Lori will be on the stand, Serena asks. That's a good question. There's always a chance, and we'll know soon. Where Gilbert's testimony is different in a way, Ashley says, can they throw their testimony out? Not necessarily, because two people can witness the same thing but see it differently and have different versions. If you're on a street corner and your friend is across the street and a car crash happens, your testimony is going to be a little different than hers, even though you saw the same exact thing. Now, if there were major differences or lies or whatnot, the defense would have questioned them. And the defense, when they go to make their defense, they will try to poke holes in everybody's testimony, probably including the Gilberts. So Ashley, I'm wondering what you mean by it was different in a way. People might get dates wrong. I'm trying to think if there was any major differences that I heard from them. I don't think there was, though, but maybe you did. Sarah says, is Keith Morrison going to be at the verdict? Well, Sarah, Keith is a very busy man. He is working on a lot of Datelines and a lot of podcasts. And I don't know if he's going to make it for the verdict. And if I did know, I probably wouldn't announce it because you all would probably go running to the courthouse to meet him because he is the nicest guy in the world. So I don't know. More to come. Kathy, has the jury watched the infamous butt-slapping video from the storage unit? No. And that is one thing in my mind that I keep thinking, are they going to show that video? Maybe that will be in this 160-page document that we see, or maybe it'll be later. They have talked about the storage unit stuff. We've never seen the footage, but maybe that'll change tomorrow. Sonia, is the jury allowed to take notes? Yes, they are allowed to take notes, but I believe the judge told them when they go in to deliberate, they can't rely on their notes. They need to talk. An interesting fact, if you are a witness, you can bring in your notes as long as the defense has a chance to read through them and the prosecution. You cannot, when you're on the witness stand, you can't have them open like in front of you. You can refer to them and then you have to close them and then you have to testify to that. So you can't read anything. Your testimony is simply off of memory. Robbie says, what's Lori's reaction to hearing her own voice? Not much of a reaction. Lately, this week, she seems to be more leaning in and looking at the witness, especially Audrey Batterio yesterday. Did Chad increase Tammy's life insurance right before she died? We talked about that tonight, Amy. It looks like it was increased, but with Tammy's consent, unless he forged the document, but I haven't heard anything about that. How did Chad and Alex get away with burying anyone in the daylight? Where are the neighbors? Where are the family members? Well, this is a very remote area in the country. It was fall, and people burn leaves in the fall. In fact, I was driving home from Boise to Idaho Falls last week, and I saw a big smoke pile up ahead, or a big plume of smoke. And I got closer thinking, oh, I might have some news. And sure enough, it was just somebody burning a bunch of debris. And so it's common to see this. It's not uncommon. It's not like it's a city where this is happening. Amy, did Melani, Lori's niece, get contempt of court? No. And that leads us back to the beginning. Real quick, I want to keep you up to date that Melani Pawlowski was released as a witness. Her attorney called me tonight. Josh Garner said that Melani arrived in Boise Monday afternoon with her husband. They were ready to testify on Tuesday. Melani was. She was set to go at 1 p.m. Around 3 p.m., she was told she could go back to the hotel. The next day, Wednesday, yesterday, at 10 a.m., she was at the courthouse ready to testify. She never took the stand. At 3:30, the prosecutor said she could go home to Arizona. She could be called back to testify. She is still under subpoena, and she's waiting to hear from the prosecutors if she will testify again. She's not in contempt of court. She has not been arrested. She's home. So that's what happens with that. Thank you all for being here. I feel like I'm losing my voice. I hope I'm not. It might just be the allergies. Here's where you can follow me. My reporter page, my Twitter page. Are you tweeting with Eaton? Start doing it if you're not. And there's my Instagram, n.eaton. And there is my YouTube page for eastidahonews.com, where we have all of the court video. And I believe that all the audio from today has been uploaded already. So if you wanted to hear that, you can. Tomorrow, court gets out at noon. And so I think I'm going to go home. And I think maybe I'll do one of these from home tomorrow night at 7:30. What do you think? Because we will have stuff to talk about tomorrow, and I like to get to your questions. Maybe Erica can pop in and say hi. So let me know if I should be back here tomorrow night, 7:30. We'll hop on and we'll talk again. And one other thing I need to clear up that I said last night that I got wrong. I said that JJ's biological parents died. That is not true. His biological mother, passed away. His biological father is still living. But his biological father has the same name as his dad, and he passed away last year. So that's where the confusion came in. JJ's biological dad is still alive. His mom is not alive. Someone asked if they have been coming to the trial. They have not. But Larry and Kay have been there every day. Annie Cushing's been there. Tammy Daybell's aunt has been there these past few days. Lori's uncle has been there. A great guy, Rex. His daughters have been there. So there's been a lot of family members. Samantha and Jason Gawilliam came up. Tammy's sister and husband. So there's where we're at. All right, everybody. I can't thank you enough for watching. I hope you had a great day. We'll see you tomorrow night, probably at 7:30. If I'm not here tomorrow, tune in Sunday night. We'll wrap it all up as we start a new week in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. Have a good night.